With Damon, what have you seen from him through now? Where do you think he still needs to go to develop as a D-tack?
Well, obviously, Damon's got great ability. Explosive, really can play hard, run to the football. I think from here, what the expectation is, again, his expectations have risen. Made plays last year, played some really good football at times, but it's about consistency. And I think that's just with our whole football team. It's the understanding on how to show up every day, how to learn to play to what my capability is and play that on every snap. And I think that's a situation for Damon, but I don't think it's just Damon. I think that's everybody involved with our football program right now.
What have you found about the depth that you have at defensive line? Because that's been an issue for this team in the years past.
You know, I think it's an intriguing. I think there's some guys that have honestly have showed up and played football maybe better than what we thought their skill set may be. But again, I think that's still fluid until 15 practices and getting in fall, letting them get adjusted. But I think there's some guys that are capable. You know, guys like Bobby Leith have shown that they've got some potential to play for us. Gabe Luna's done some nice things. Justin Thomas. So there's some guys that have maybe been dinged up, injured at times last year, and maybe have come back full strength. And our Pierre Aka, you know, there's another name. But there's some guys that have the capability and potential. I think we feel good about the potential of what that group brings to the table. But again, you know, what's their buy-in value? What's their ability to play consistently day in and day out? And then can they do and understand schematically what we're trying to get accomplished? So
Eli was talking about being based in the 4-2-5. What is it about that you like?
Well, I just love the flexibility because even though we may be based in the 4-2-5, I think if you really have studied us, we can line up in the 3-4, we can line up in the 3-3 stack. You know, we can have two defensive linemen in the games at times. It gives us flexibility and it gives us the ability to use you've heard me say this on offense, our best players and put them in position to be successful. And I think ultimately that's our job, is find out what these guys can do through 15 practices, then sit back, reevaluate it, and do a great job in the meantime then as we get into fall camp of putting them in position to be successful.
Those guys played mostly 3-4 last year. How's the adjustment been for them getting used to more of the four-man front stuff?
You know, I think they've done a good job because there was times that they were able to kick into a four-man front. I think the biggest adjustment were those defensive ends were playing four eyes, and you know that's tough to consistently play in there. You know, some of those guys were 240 pounds, 250 pounds doing that. You know, whereas now they've got the ability to get on an edge, and not to say they won't play four eyes or won't be in some of those techniques. They still will be. It's just the ability to get on edges sometimes and have the ability to put pressure on the quarterback. And I think anybody who plays defensive end, and you know, I'm a guy that played that position, you know, have been there and done that, the ability to get on an edge sometimes and be able to get after the passer, those are good. And those are good for our defensive tackles too, being in three techniques and shades and being able to play on an edge of an offensive lineman.
Eli mentioned that maybe Gabe felt a little refreshed with, you know, a new opportunity. Were you kind of saying the same thing?
Yeah, you know, I think some of those defensive ends in general, again, those guys from Gabe and, you know, there's so many of those guys, Justin Thomas and, you know, J.D. Wagner, so many of those guys. I think, again, last year, and that's to nobody's fault, not to say it was right or wrong, those guys were playing four eyes, you know, where now they get on offensive tackles at times, get moved back out, and especially a guy like Gabe, where at 240 pounds, 245 pounds, and you know, put him on an edge and let him, he's got the ability, you know, as times playing linebacker too. You know, Gabe's one of those unique guys that can play linebacker but also come up on the line and play defensive end. So I think some of those tweener guys really have felt comfortable getting back into a position where they can be creative and we can let them go make plays.
What do you need out of that Leo position to have them having an impact that you want on the defense?
Well, that guy's got to be multiple and he's got to be versatile. You know, again, you got to be able to play a little bit of linebacker and drop into coverage. He's got to be able to blitz. He's got to be able to play as a down defensive lineman at times against two tight ends or 21 personnel teams. So that's a unique skill set. And, you know, do we have that guy? Again, I don't know. You know, I think we'll find out a lot more of that as we continue through spring practice.
In the right spot, though, that guy's kind of like a chess piece that you can kind of, you know, to dictate how you kind of want things on the board to be.
Well, you know, and that guy's got to be so versatile that he is a chess piece, you know, and it's a matter of finding that right fit and that right guy. And you know, I think we've been really pleased with what we've seen from that spot so far. But again, obviously, there's a lot of football left to be played, and there's a lot of spring practice left to evaluate.
Kamari back at full strength at this point?
Yeah, he sure looks like it. You know, Kamari made a great play last week. I think it was last Tuesday. We were red zone deal, came off the edge, made a great play, and you know, I think you've seen him really starting to come into his own too. And obviously, I from an evaluation standpoint of being on the other side evaluating Kamari for the last 2 years, I think the world of what his skill set is, and especially at full strength, he's a really dynamic football player. He can run the alley, he can cover. He's a guy that can really play at the back end. And what I like about him is he's a smart kid, and he's got the ability to communicate in today's world of football. It used to be linebackers were the great communicators, but in reality, it's safeties, and those guys have to be able to align and adjust with the tempo of offenses today. And certainly, Kamara's got the ability to do it, so it's been great to see.
How did the satellite camp in conjunction with Michigan come about?
Well, I think my belief in this is always trying to where can we get the most value, the most bang for our buck, and I think obviously being able to link up with Michigan down there, I think maybe gives us the most value rather than just Iowa State going down there, and so obviously this is such a touchy subject and it's fluid until the NCAA goes to vote on all these issues, but I think the reality is it's great for kids, and it'd be a shame if this goes away. We're really devaluing young people and not giving them the opportunity to get recruited. So, I think we're going to continue to find unique ways for us to get to certain areas that maybe are outside our own radius, and how can we get the most value for us in our football program.
As for the defensive line, who do you see as kind of the leaders coming out of practice?
Yeah, again, I think that's so hard. I think we're too early to say, because I think everybody's trying to feel their way through it. It's a new defense. We're getting ourselves aligned and adjusted. Well, I think the best thing to say is that we've got some guys that have potential to be great leaders and guys that have the potential to be really good defensive linemen. But until you consistently show up every day, and when things get tough, and my job's to create practice to be tough and really hard at times and really challenging. And what I want to see is who can consistently go through that. And obviously that's what develops leadership. So I think to crown anybody the leader yet is probably unfair until we get through some of the tougher times here.
So